All right, here we go. Hold on.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Marilyn Duke, Chair of the Laws Committee for the Village of Glendale, and I'd like to welcome my committee members and confirm a quorum. Nancy? Here? And it's just the two of us on the committee as of now. We do have an ex officio member, Mayor Lofty.
I'm here.
Okay, and I see we have other council members attending, Mike Bessel
Yes.
and Treasurer Mike Beaugrand,
Here.
Police Chief Dave Warman,
Here.
and Village Administrator Wally Cordes.
I'm here as well.
I'm also seeing that Assistant Administrator David Lumsden is participating as well. Is that correct, David?
I am, and if you wouldn't mind, Chair, Mr. Edmonston, who called the office earlier this afternoon, is connecting to the meeting to participate as well. I'm not sure at what point, but he is signing into the meeting to participate.
Okay, let me see whom that is, since we don't have an opportunity this afternoon for public comment. John Edmonston. Okay, so at this stage, John, I'm going to ask you to kindly listen. We have not advertised an opportunity for public comment, and we'll of course like to hear what you're saying, but it may not be at this particular meeting. Thank you. The agenda is brief. It's action on the June 23rd minutes of the committee. We have 3 old business items, and that's to hear an update on the no engine brake signs on Congress Avenue. We'll also have an update on the July 1st conversation, which was mentioned during the June 23rd meeting, and as well as the mayor for a brief update on the march that was being planned and had also been mentioned in the June 23rd meeting. We have a new business item, and that is to initially discuss defacing public property, or to really look at what provisions we have in our ordinance which protects public property against defacement, vandalism, etc. This is an initial discussion, and I'm quite sure there will be others that follow. Having said that and established a quorum, can we have an action on the minutes for the June 23rd meeting as previously circulated with one revision, and that is to note that instead of Pastor Logan, it was Kyle Logan, whom was the contact for discussing the march that was to be held this Saturday. With that,
I move to ratify the
Thank
minutes.
so moved, and I'll second, and it's passed unanimously since it's just the two of us. Moving on to the old business, Chief Warman, can you give us a quick update on the no engine brake signs that's to go on Congress Avenue?
Okay. The signs were put up yesterday,
Great.
and they're placed just before you get to the crest of both hills going south on Route 4 and on Congress. And they're ready. So Tom did an excellent job rushing that through, and they're up and ready to go.
Thank you. The update on the July 1st conversation, I can provide that in a nutshell. About 20 prominent leaders and residents in Glendale were invited and did participate in a conversation at Christ Church Glendale on dismantling racism here in Glendale. I was pleased with the turnout and the level of candid talk. A few things came out of that and are being shared with each participant and will be shared with the general public, hopefully through the Glendale e-newsletter this Friday. Thus far, specific responses and comments have been sent to several of the leaders who participated, and it's up to them as to how they wish to further share that or their next step with that. There is no overarching plan or design or committee that came out of that conversation, nor one that went into it. I can say that several common comments emerged from 4 different small groups. And one of the comments is that communications from the village and from civic groups within the village should be more racially and culturally sensitive, to welcome and reach out to include all people. Also, I can say that there is a need to publicly acknowledge Glendale's race-related contributions, past historical segregation, and achievements of people of color here in Glendale. There's also a need to publicly acknowledge that improvements are needed today to welcome and promote our racially and culturally diverse community. What I'm saying now may be taken for granted by members of this committee and the people participating actively in this meeting here, but yet there is a perception out there which came from each of the 4 small groups that more needs to be done, especially promoting a racially and culturally diverse Glendale. There are several other specifics that generally came from those small group conversations, and one other which rose to the front was the need for a community recreation facility and a request to do something with the something for the community with the Eckstein School building and property. The Eckstein School building and property emerged throughout each of the small group conversations. Another action item is to celebrate Glendale's racial diversity and hallmarks. The question is really not whether these things should be done, but how they are to be done and how frequently they're to be done. I think we can all acknowledge readily that it should be done, but many see that it is not being done enough or effectively. Does racism exist in Glendale? What does it look like now? Yes, there are some perspectives that racism is embedded and that there is a lack of transparency. There's also perspectives that Black citizens here, residents here are treated subtly with differences from the white residents. There are other perspectives, and again, I won't go into detail to share them all out now, but I would like to share with council that the communications were sent to the leaders who participated, and they're being asked to consider them and further take action as they deemed. I've offered myself to work with anyone and any group who's willing to work on this matter of dismantling racism and promoting the diversity in our village. Having said that, I'll entertain any questions about the conversation. And if there are no questions, I'll ask Mayor Lofty if he could give us an update on the march, which we know now has been canceled.
I'm not muted.
You're not muted.
Okay. Very, very quickly, we were planning to have the march take place on this coming Saturday at 1 o'clock. And we had been working with the organizer of the march to take all necessary measures to have the march be peaceful and achieve its goals. In the end, the governor put out some regulations that when we looked at them, took a hard look at them, it was difficult for us and the village of Woodlawn to continue working with having this march go forward. We both agreed that we had to step back from it, and we told the organizer about that, and he was disappointed, but he did understand. And so as of now, the march has been canceled.
Mr. Mayor, just maybe for people viewing this, could you provide some perspective on who organized the march? What was the purpose of the march? And what was the Village of Glendale's responsibility within the march itself?
Okay. The march was organized by Kyle Logan. He is the son of Pastor Kendall Logan of the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, and mostly in the Woodlawn side, A.J. Williams, who is from an old line Woodlawn family and was a star football player at University of Michigan. The march was described as a unity march, which I asked Mr. Logan what that meant. He said unifying people of all races towards better relations is the basic point. We were there, we the village, and particularly our police force, were there to, first of all, keep the marchers safe, should there be any problems from the outside, and then also to keep the village safe, should anybody decide that they had motives that were not lawful. And so we had, the chief had been working with Woodlawn and other communities to have security. The primary security in Glendale would be the Glendale Police Force. Primary security in Woodlawn would have been the Woodlawn Police Force, and other communities were standing by should we need additional assistance.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just toss something in? I think that, I don't know, but I suspect that this was a part of a larger effort. There was a piece in the paper about unity marches being held by churches across the county. So while we didn't see that necessarily, I suspect that it was a part of that larger initiative.
You may be right, and I did put that question specifically to Mr. Logan, whether a unity march was more of a at least movement that went beyond Glendale, and he said he picked that term for it because it's what he wanted to
Okay.
unifying various diverse peoples together, and he did not acknowledge to me any reliance on any outside involvement in planning his march. Certainly, there were no outside organizations. At least he told us specifically, no, there were no outside organizations involved.
Okay.
So you could be right. It could be that he was inspired by something that he heard about a unity march, particularly if it circulates among churches. Don't know, but I think from everything we were hearing, it was pretty much a homegrown effort.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
Okay.
you, Don. I had been asked by a number of people if I was involved in the planning of the march, and I was not involved. I did support the concept and purpose of the march, but I have not been involved in the planning or the design or the symbols or the logistics or anything else. In fact, I was communicating with Don and the chief, our police chief Warman, to find out what the logistics were going to be, what the route would be, and what time it would start. So, but I do want it to be clear that I was ready to march. And I do also understand the need for canceling the march. I too had expressed concerns about COVID-19 spikes and DeWine's recent order recognizing Hamilton County as code level 3 and requiring mask anytime anyone is in public. That plus the heat and other physical and personal concerns on my mind, but I was ready to walk. And I proudly wear the t-shirt of the NAACP to remind me and others of the importance of marches in history of the civil rights movements, which generated many of the gains that we benefit from today. Now, having said that, if there are any other comments on the march, we'll go on with, if not, we'll go on with the agenda here. Seeing no comments, the next item on the agenda is the last item on the agenda. It's a new item, and that's defacing public property. An incident arose over last Friday, which we're not going into details here, but it raises questions about what provisions we have in our code to protect our public property against defacement, vandalism, damage, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've placed this item on the agenda, and I understand that Wally, our administrator, has asked Dave Warman to just briefly update us or inform us about what provisions we have in our code. Dave, Police Chief?
Hi, we have several tools that we can use for various different types of criminal mischief, damage, vandalism. Ordinances are solid. They're pretty much modeled after state code sections. They can range anywhere from a minor misdemeanor to a felony of the 5th degree. So I believe that there should be no change in what we have. We have plenty of tools to work with. Add more tools would complicate things. Really, whoever designed our original general offenses and ordinances did a great job, and we still use those today. And they're current, and we have used them recently as well as in the past. So we have no problem with what we have in front of us. An example, we have section 13201, which is disorderly conduct. That's kind of like the catch-all you can use for pretty much just anything of disorderly conduct, and more of a lighter or minor misdemeanor offense, all the way up to criminal vandalism or criminal damaging. We've actually got a section for criminal damaging and vehicular vandalism. So we have plenty of tools, and you know, again, they're there and at the ready. So I think we'll find.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your last sentence, Dave, Chief Warman?
I said, I believe we have plenty of tools in our toolbox that we can use to enforce the laws given before us. And I believe that I don't think we need any more. We have enough right now that we can use that are applicable to various different types of situations.
Thank you, and I appreciate your assessment. We probably also have some provisions for under the Ohio law because we are a municipality within Ohio and not an island unto ourselves. So again, we're not going into all the legalese, but I do appreciate Chief Warman's assessment. It's an appropriate time to bring this up because there is heightened sense of protest and people expressing themselves publicly, and we need to know what provisions we have to protect the village property. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? The bottom line I'm hearing is that there are at this time no recommended changes in our ordinance going to council. That's the outcome of this, unless I hear otherwise. Okay, hearing none. Let's see here. time permits us to, if there are there any other agenda items? Hearing no other agenda items, we do have time to hear from a resident, John Edmonston. I did not allow or invite public comment on this in this meeting, and it is my intent to keep it within 45 minutes. Right now, we are at 20 minutes. John, would you care to comment? Cannot hear you.
Muted.
John, you can hold your space bar down to temporarily unmute yourself and talk while you hold it down.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. No, I didn't have anything to say. I did want to be here in case I heard something that would make me want to say something, but nothing was said in this meeting that made me want to say or add anything to the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. And express my say hello to your family from me and the rest of us.
My family sends their regards back to you.
Thank you. Nancy, is there anything else on the agenda or that you'd like to say before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Only that I would advance motion to adjourn. I believe we've reached the end of the agenda. I move that we adjourn.
Second, and so moved unanimously. This meeting is ended. Thank you all.